Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell adjusted her hairnet and apron, scanning the bustling mess hall with practiced precision. 6 months ago, she'd been leading covert operations in hostile territory. Now she was serving mashed potatoes and collecting intelligence on threats that came from within. The Fort Braxton mess hall hummed with the usual lunchtime chaos, metal trays clanking, soldiers laughing, the occasional shout across tables. Sarah kept her head down, her movements efficient as she'd been trained. Only her eyes betrayed her purpose, constantly assessing, cataloging faces and conversations. "New girl's pretty quiet," remarked Sergeant Willis to his buddy as Sarah refilled the green beans. "Doesn't smile much either." Sarah forced a polite nod and moved on. Her mission parameters were clear: observe, document, and identify the source of escalating harassment targeting female personnel on base. 3 women had already requested transfers after receiving threatening notes. 2 more had reported equipment tampering. The latest victim had been cornered in the barrack shower, the incident that finally prompted Colonel Eileen Collins to call in specialized help. "We need someone they won't suspect," Collins had told her during their secure briefing. "Someone who can handle herself if things go sideways." Sarah had been the obvious choice, one of only 7 women to ever complete SEAL training, though her status remained classified to all but the highest levels of command. Her combat record spoke for itself: 3 tours in classified locations, 2 distinguished service crosses, and skills that made her as lethal with a dinner spoon as most soldiers were with standard-issue weapons. At the far corner of the mess hall sat Lieutenant James Harris and his circle, 5 men who commanded respect through fear rather than leadership. Sarah had been watching them for 2 weeks now. They controlled the social hierarchy of the base through subtle intimidation and not-so-subtle threats. "Hey, lunch lady, more potatoes over here," Harris called out, smirking at his companions. Sarah complied, approaching their table with the serving spoon. As she leaned forward, Harris whispered something to Private Donovan that made the younger man's face flush with discomfort. "Something funny, Lieutenant?" Sarah asked mildly. Harris looked up, surprised at being addressed directly. "Nothing that concerns the help," he replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sarah noticed a folded paper being passed under the table, similar to the threatening notes reported by the female officers. She committed the handwriting to memory as she glimpsed it briefly. Later that evening, Sarah transmitted her observations to Colonel Collins from her small quarters near the kitchen facilities. "They're getting bolder. The pattern suggests they're planning something within the next 48 hours. Target is likely Lieutenant Rodriguez. She just received commendation for the border operation." "Maintain your cover," Collins instructed. "We need concrete evidence before we can move." Sarah acknowledged the order, though an ease settled in her stomach. The threats were escalating faster than anticipated. As she prepared for bed, she checked her concealed sidearm and the combat knife strapped to her ankle, insurance policies she hoped not to need. Tomorrow would be different. Harris and his crew had kitchen duty inspection at 0500 hours. Sarah would be there early, setting up breakfast service, watching and waiting. If her instincts were correct, they would make their move soon, unaware that the quiet mess hall worker they'd been dismissing was actually the most dangerous person on base, a Navy SEAL with over 30 successful operations behind her, just waiting for them to cross the line. The kitchen's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sarah scrubbed pots before dawn. 3 weeks into her undercover assignment, and tonight felt different. Lieutenant Rodriguez had reported finding her locker vandalized that morning, the 5th incident this month. Sarah's instincts prickled when Lieutenant Harris and 3 of his followers entered the kitchen an hour early for their inspection duty. Their usual swagger seemed heightened, adrenaline practically radiating off them. "Morning, gentlemen," Sarah said evenly, continuing to work. Harris leaned against the industrial refrigerator. "You're here early, lunch lady." "Lots to prepare," she replied, noting how they positioned themselves between her and both exits. The mess hall door swung open as Private Jesse Chen entered, stopping short at the unexpected gathering. Sarah recognized her as one of the women who had reported harassment last month. "Private," Harris called out with false warmth, "just the person we wanted to see." Chen's eyes darted nervously between the men. "I just came to get coffee before PT, sir." "Coffee can wait," Harris said, nodding to Corporal Donovan, who moved to block the exit. "We need to discuss your recent complaint to the CO." Sarah set down her scrub brush, calculating distances and angles. 4 men, 1 frightened private, and whatever weapon Harris kept touching in his right pocket. "Lieutenant, I should finish these dishes before breakfast," Sarah interjected, offering Chen an escape route. Harris turned, his friendly mask slipping. "Stay out of military business. This doesn't concern civilian staff." "I think it does," Sarah countered, stepping forward. "Private Chen, would you mind checking the pantry for more coffee filters?" Chen moved toward the pantry, away from the men, but Sergeant Willis blocked her path. "Nobody's going anywhere until we straighten some things out." Sarah watched Chen's breathing accelerate, panic setting in. The situation was deteriorating faster than expected. "You women think you can change everything with your complaints, filing reports, crying to the colonel. We built this unit before they forced integration on us." "Sir, I never—" "Shut up," Harris snapped, pulling something from his pocket, a switchblade that clicked open with menacing precision. "Time for a lesson about chain of command." Sarah moved then, stepping between them. "That's enough, Lieutenant." The kitchen fell silent. Harris's expression shifted from surprise to amusement. "Look at the lunch lady playing hero," he laughed, turning to his companions. "We'll deal with you after we finish with the private." "I don't think so," Sarah replied, her posture subtly changing, weight balanced perfectly as she'd been trained. Harris's smile vanished. "Get out of the way or we'll destroy your life too. One phone call and you'll never work on a military base again." Sarah assessed the threat level, escalating rapidly. Weapon present, hostile intent clear. Colonel Collins had authorized defensive measures if personnel were in immediate danger. "Private Chen," Sarah said, without taking her eyes off Harris, "please step back." Harris lunged forward, blade extended. Sarah moved with practiced efficiency, deflecting his arm and using his momentum to slam him face first into the steel countertop. The knife clattered to the floor. The other men froze in shock as their leader crumpled, blood streaming from his nose. "What the hell?" Donovan gasped. Sarah stood ready, her cover effectively blown. "Next?" she asked calmly. Willis and the third man, Peterson, exchanged glances before rushing her simultaneously. Sarah sidestepped, using a serving tray to deflect Willis's punch before delivering a precise strike to Peterson's solar plexus that left him gasping. Chen backed toward the alarm button by the door, but Donovan caught her, pressing his own knife to her throat. "Stop or she bleeds." Sarah paused, calculating options as Harris struggled to his feet, rage distorting his features. "You've made a serious mistake. We'll destroy your life." "I don't think so," Sarah replied, her voice dropping to a register she rarely used outside of combat operations. The change was subtle but unmistakable. The kitchen worker vanishing, replaced by something altogether more dangerous. Harris faltered, sensing the shift. "Who the hell are you?" "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, Navy SEAL Team 6. She kept her eyes on Donovan, who still held Chen with the knife. "And you're making a career-ending mistake." Disbelief flashed across their faces, followed by something Sarah recognized from battlefields across 3 continents. The dawning realization of a catastrophic tactical error. "Bullshit," Harris spat, though uncertainty crept into his voice. "There aren't any female SEALs." "That's what you were supposed to think," Sarah replied, slowly reaching for her collar. She pulled out her dog tags, letting them catch the fluorescent light. "Now let Private Chen go before this gets worse for everyone." Donovan's hand trembled slightly, the knife wavering at Chen's throat. "She's lying, Lieutenant." Sarah sighed. "Private Chen, duck on my mark." She locked eyes with the terrified soldier, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Mark." Chen dropped as Sarah's hand flashed toward the industrial sink, grabbing a heavy metal ladle and launching it with precision. It struck Donovan's wrist with a sickening crack. The knife clattered to the floor as Chen scrambled away. The mess hall doors burst open. Colonel Eileen Collins entered with 4 MPs, weapons drawn. "Stand down, all of you," Collins commanded. Harris, clutching his bleeding nose, pointed at Sarah. "This woman assaulted an officer. She's delusional, claiming to be some kind of... Lieutenant Commander Mitchell is exactly who she says she is, and she's been gathering evidence on your little harassment campaign for 3 weeks." The color drained from Harris's face as he noticed the small camera embedded in Sarah's apron button. "MPs, take these 4 into custody. Charges will include assault, conspiracy, conduct unbecoming, and threatening fellow soldiers." As the MPs handcuffed the men, Sarah moved to Chen, who was shaking but unhurt. "You're okay now, Private." "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't know what they were going to do." "That was the point," Sarah replied. "They thought they were untouchable." Later, in Colonel Collins' office, Sarah stood at ease, back in her proper uniform, for the first time in weeks. The oak leaf insignia on her collar felt right after so long undercover. 12 victims have come forward since this morning, Collins said, reviewing the report. "Your evidence is irrefutable. The investigation is expanding to 2 other bases where Harris served previously." Sarah nodded. "The pattern was systematic. They targeted women they thought wouldn't fight back or wouldn't be believed." "They never expected someone like you," Collins said with grim satisfaction. "General Wolfenbauer is implementing your recommended protocols across all bases. Training programs are being revised to address this type of behavior before it takes root." "And the women who were targeted?" "Private Chen has requested special forces training," Collins smiled. "Says she found inspiration. Several others are withdrawing their transfer requests." 3 days later, Sarah addressed the assembled company in the same mess hall where everything had unfolded. Faces that had once looked past her now regarded her with newfound respect. "The strength of our military isn't measured by how we treat those with power. It's measured by how we protect those targeted by the powerful. Remember that when you see injustice. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on foreign soil, but right here at home." As she concluded, Sarah noticed Private Chen standing taller among her peers, no longer hiding in the background. One life changed, then another, rippling outward. It wasn't the kind of victory that earned medals, but in Sarah's experience, it was the kind that mattered most. The battle for respect was never truly won, only fought again and again by those brave enough to stand their ground.